The countdown makes it feel extra official
That's
too. So
it
that's
makes
right.
it feel legit. I saw that.
Yeah, yeah. All right, you guys, what's going on? It's Blaise here at the Blue Chip Athletic Club podcast. Today is February 24th, 2026. I'm stoked today to welcome the soon to be, I know you call you, but anyway, Dr. Jimmy James King. Really excited to chat with him about all things health and wellness today. First, before I get into that, a couple of housekeeping things. One, our Blue Chip Athletic Club app is live, as it always is. You guys can come over and get a month for free with us on the homepage. Go ahead and check us out. We've got a ton of other, I'll call smaller programs, offerings that we have. Oh, and I guess another thing that I should have mentioned before we got going too far is if you hear a ton of construction going on in the background, it's because my house is under actual construction right now. So if the sound gets super weird, realize that it's a jackhammer or it's a drill going into concrete, and hopefully it goes away in a bit. But what else we got? Okay, app stuff. We're doing one-on-one coaching. We're doing small group training here in the Tampa Bay area for you guys that are locals and looking to make some real health change. All of that stuff is application based. Let us know if you got any questions about that. Partners at Sweet Perfections, First Form. We've got Log 10, a bunch of those guys that I want to make sure that we shout out, where we get all of our supplements, protein cookies, as well as the best pilot logbook in the biz. Let us know if you guys have any interest in those things. We'll send it over to you absolutely free. And then we're going to get this thing rolling. Jimmy, I'm stoked to have you. What I want to do is I want to give you opportunity, like, hey, talk. You can go back as far as you want, origin story. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into kind of how we connected and how I kind of fell upon the ability to have you on here, which I'm super excited about. So go ahead, man. Origin story. Tell me where you're from, where you're from.
Yeah, so I grew up in Texas, and naturally, it's a huge football state. But my family is heavily influenced by basketball. Like we have a bunch of basketball athletes, and like my origin into fitness, exercise, health, and well-being didn't really start until I'd say like the 10th grade. It's funny because I actually made a post about this not too long ago where I was in the weight room and my first exercise I ever did was the upright row, and it was in football class. And I remember struggling with the bar doing an upright row. It was just so funny because like now I can do that like for ease. But anyways, so
No big deal.
I didn't really start. Yeah, subtle
It's
flex.
a small flex to start, dude.
Yeah.
Just like, look,
Um, but I didn't really start lifting until junior year in high school. But even then, I wasn't really bought into it. Um, I played football. I played basketball in high school. Um, and then it wasn't until I graduated high school that I really started getting into exercise. And I wanted to go play basketball somewhere, but the school I went to Texas A&M Corpus Christi for my first semester of college in the fall of 2010, and then I tried to walk on there. It's a mid-major Division One school. I tried to walk on. At the time, they didn't have any spots available, so went back home to San Antonio, and I got connected with some friends. Friend was working at GNC. He was lifting at the YMCA that I would go to, so we just kind of got started on this journey for me where I just started like working out like crazy. And I think that if anyone knows about the newbie gains, I probably gained about 30 pounds of muscle. I mean, just probably weight in general. I don't know if it was exactly muscle, but like 30 pounds of weight. I went from 160 to 190 in like, dude, I don't even know, like 3 months. It was kind of intense. But that entire time I'm playing basketball still, like some local AAU stuff. And then that next fall in 2011, or I'm sorry, next summer in 2011, the entire coaching staff at Texas A&M Corpus Christi was fired. And one of my local coaches in San Antonio, he knew the incoming coach, and they ended up connecting me, sent him my film, sent him all this stuff, and they're pretty much building a team now from scratch. So they ended up calling me. I remember I was working a basketball camp. I got the phone call at this basketball camp, like, "Hey James, we want you to come and play at Texas A&M Corpus Christi." As a walk on, but I was chomping at the bits. Like, dude, I should remember I was so excited. I was crying in the bathroom. It was just like a dream come true for me. And then it was when I got to college that's when my like drive really expanded. Like I was all about the weight room. I was all about training and developing this work ethic that I just never had when I was in high school. I was very like um I was gifted amongst high school athletes, but anyone that has played like any collegiate sport, once you get into that realm, you know how different it is because it's no longer like everyone that's in your area that's playing, it's the best of the best in the country. So that really kind of kicked off my weightlifting journey. I had amazing strength coaches. And then that kind of ignited a passion for me. I ended up graduating in 2014. And then from there, I was kind of like in limbo. I got my bachelor's in psychology and I didn't know what I was going to do when I graduated. I thought I was going to go up to New Jersey and go to school. That didn't end up happening. And somehow, my coach, he was like, "Hey, James, just come back and be a graduate assistant basketball coach." I was like, "Okay, that's cool. I love basketball. I'll start this journey." But at the same time, I needed to make money to go to graduate school. So I'm I started to study for the National Academy of Sports Medicine personal training certification. Started doing that. I got that certification around what was that the fall of 2014. So I was doing that while I was working as a graduate assistant basketball coach. And that was yeah, fall of 2014 going into spring of 2015. And I don't know what happened, but I kind of fell out of love with basketball at that time. I don't know if it was just like years of playing basketball all this time. And I had a really great mentor in the strength conditioning department. His name is Rich Burnett. He I wouldn't say he recruited me, but he was just very open to the idea of me switching from a basketball graduate assistant to a strength conditioning graduate assistant. And he was very welcoming for me. And that was really when it kind of just kicked off for me. I was like, I was working in that realm. I was around sports still. So I still had that drive and desire to be around athletes. But it was a different avenue. So it's a new challenge for me, right? Because I was playing basketball my whole life. Not that it felt stale. I just knew like the ball stops bouncing one day. And so I wanted to do something else that was outside of that. And so strength conditioning kind of filled that void. And ever since then, I'd say it just, I don't know, the snowball has kept rolling and it's just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. I ended up, I was getting my master's in exercise science at the time while I was a graduate assistant. So my whole life revolved around exercise. I was waking up at 4 in the morning to go train clients at a local gym from like 4 to 9, and then I would go to school, do my graduate assistant stuff from like 9 to I don't know, maybe 9 to 3. Do some more classes from like 4, I don't know, 4 to 7, and then I'd go back to work 7 to 9, and then kind of repeat this process. And that was for like a whole 2 years. And then come 2016, I'm probably a quarter of the way done with my master's program, or I'm sorry, 3 quarters of the way done. And I just had like some really major life changing events at the time. And I ended up dropping out of school to join the Coast Guard. Um, and it was so foolish looking back on it because I mean I'm right there by the finish line, and it kind of would have kind of set me up for success in the realm of strength conditioning because as it turned out, one of the coaches that was there as a assistant strength coach, he ended up leaving a few years later. I'm sorry, Rich actually left. He left a few years later, probably like a year maybe after I left. And then the assistant coach filled Rich's spot as the head strength coach. So there was an opening as the assistant. And sometimes I look back on like, man, maybe I could have gotten it, basketball player, turned strength coach, fill that void. Like it would have been real nice. But I'm really glad to how things turned out. Like it put me where I need to be today, which I'm really thankful for. So that's 2016. During that whole time, I also did get my strength and conditioning certification from the NSCA, the National Strength and Conditioning Association. And then when I joined the Coast Guard in 2016, I thought all the strength and conditioning stuff was behind me. So I let my certifications lapse, my personal training, strength coach, and I thought like Coast Guard was the way. And probably 2 years in to my Coast Guard career, I was like, yeah, not I don't want to do this. Just like I want to get back to strength conditioning somehow. Like I should have not have let those things lapse. I shouldn't have let these I shouldn't have like foregone my education. I realized it was my passion while I was in the Coast Guard. And I end up going back to school, enrolling back into school in 2018 to finish my master's. And unfortunately, the school that I was going to didn't take my previous credits from Texas A&M Corpus Christi, and Texas A&M Corpus Christi didn't have an online program at the time. So all those credits were kind of like a wash, which kind of sucked. But it's just the way it is. So I kind of kept pressing forward. At this time, I moved to San Diego. I'm at the Maritime Security Response Team here in the Coast Guard, and I'm doing that whole job and going to school. So it's kind of like a lot for me. Um, and then eventually, I graduate with my master's in kinesiology in 2021 October timeframe, or maybe April. I can't remember exactly, but it wasn't until 2023 when I started my PhD program, if I'm tracking right. I think it was the fall, like August timeframe, and that's kind of been that whole, at least, education journey for me. The whole time I've been here in San Diego, I've been training military athletes, or tactical athletes, as they like to call them, kind of breaking down barriers and stigmas in terms of how people understand fitness and exercise, similar to what you're doing with the pilots. And I think that's kind of one of the reasons why we connected so well, is we have this like, at least in my opinion, this drive to like disband these myths of exercise amongst um, the military community, because we know that it's more than just bodybuilding and CrossFit and like all these like minor things that play a part in training and performance. But you know, whether it's wellness, athletic performance, anything that involves moving your body, there's so much more to it. And I think we both inherently want people to know the most up to date information. Um, so yeah, the past 6 years I've been focused solely on like training people here in the Coast Guard, deployable special forces, or I don't even know what we're calling ourselves nowadays, but in this community. And that's kind of been the journey, the background to got me to where I'm at
Yeah,
today.
dude. What's it's so funny. There's a bunch of stuff that I kind of want to hit on because I think a lot of it is incredibly. You guys just heard Jimmy give like this spiel of like these are all the things that he's done in the health and wellness and performance and studying for masters in kinesiology or masters in exercise science and then masters in kinesiology and now in a doctorate program and all these things. And my question for you is like immediately when people like ask to work with you, does anybody like ask like what certifications you have or the education you have in like health and wellness? Is that like an immediate question of like, hey, does this happen to you?
Uh, I don't, I don't think so. Not in the Coast Guard realm, because I think I know a lot of the people, and they tend to, I guess, talk for me. Like, oh, James, no, like he's getting his doctorate, he has his master's, like he's been doing this for us for X amount of years, and they kind of
They
pass it
see like,
along. Yeah, and
okay,
for like, I just started recently training um, a uh, a person, a high schooler in the area who plays football, and his father. I did have to do some kind of selling in that regard of like who I am, kind of build my credibility, like what I've done. But it's definitely, yeah. I mean, I think in my experience, it's always been like, okay, who is this guy? What are you? What do you know? What makes you different from anyone else, any other trainer? Um, and usually, at least for me personally, I try to steer away from the comparisons, because pretty much we all know the same stuff. Even I think one of the biggest things is people think, oh, he's working for a doctorate, so he must know like so much. And I'm like, honestly, being like working for your PhD is more about being a producer of research and information. It doesn't make me any less like smarter on the topic, right, than someone with a master's. Yeah, I do more advanced and applied classes, but the doctorate is really just how to perform research and how to do it effectively and unbiased, efficiently. And I think again, that's a stigma on its own about like what getting a PhD is. It just means like I know so much. Um, but that's a
Yeah,
topic for.
it's funny because like I'll tell you, in my world, for the most part, I've never had a pilot, active duty military member, or somebody else ask me who did my certification process, what education do I have involved in X, Y, or Z thing. It's always been like word of mouth. Somebody hears about something, or they like find you, and then they like look at
Yeah.
some of the stuff and they resonate with something that you say. And it's
Hmm.
funny, like you have a ton of education, and we talked about this a lot when we met. And I'll go over that here in a second, but like when we talked about a lot of those things, like it's funny how like we get kind of wrapped around the axle of a lot of those things, but you are unique, in my opinion, because you have all the education, but you've also done a great job at breaking down like I'll say things that are really complex into really sustainable and bite-sized pieces for people. And I think that is what is a true marker of somebody who like knows what they're doing. Because like, that you're somebody who walks the walk. You're not just the doc. Like the best example I think I can give you is like the doctor who's on heart meds, right? It's like, oh,
Yeah.
they're like taking stuff and they're diabetic and they're like doing all this stuff. And then they're telling you not to, eat dog shit, to not to smoke, to whatever. And they're like, they
Yeah.
are all the same things, right? And it's funny, like we in this business, in this community, and in the military even too, your body becomes your business card a bit, nobody is going to go and be like, oh, like I'm going to go train with a Fat Albert down the road. Like, no, people don't want to look like Fat Albert down the road. They want to look like Jimmy, who's shredded and can upright row more than an entire barbell. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what it's about. And it's so funny. So, I'll kind of connect some of the dots too, which I think is cool. So, Jimmy and I ended up meeting by going to this uh, I call it like Coast Guard, like Health and Wellness Summit, I guess, for lack of a better term. Maybe that's the best way to put it. Where they got a group of people together and we basically talked about health and wellness and are launching like a new program in the service that we can or don't need to get into really, because this is more about kind of you and kind of what you're doing and in your background and learning about some, nerding out and some strength and conditioning and health stuff too. But sitting in a room with all these people, it was evident that Jimmy had a lot to bring to the table, not only in his community, but outside of that. So it's super cool, man. I'm glad that you were able to come on and we can start, geeking out about, hey, what's the best path and certain things that I think get people hung up. I'll say like common pitfalls for people, like especially in the military or in your community, that I think is like really, really relevant, prevalent all over the place, and just ways that people can kind of get better. Yeah, dude. Thanks again for coming on and for chatting and building your credibility there, dude. I
Thanks for having me.
like, oh yeah, dude. I'm just doctor baby.
Thanks for having me, man. It's I love just talking to talk with like-minded people because it's one, you can learn so much, not even from just from sharing ideas, like the way you see it, your perspective. I just going off on a tangent again, but like I just finished this class about mixed methods research, and a lot of it was um, tailored to like trying to understand perspectives of like qualitative research. What's a qualitative is just like description, like rather than using numbers to do the research, like I don't know, someone's jump height. I ask you like, oh, how did the jump feel? And you describe it, right? And it was like more about like trying to use those perspectives, I guess, in research and get information out of it. And I think for me, that's like a big driver in terms of just trying to understand one, what other people may know and what I know and sharing where we can find common ground. And I think that's like one of my favorite things about talking exercise with people that really care about it.
Yeah, dude. What's really funny too, and I think you probably have felt this, you actually alluded to it earlier, is like the more I learn and get educated in the world of health and, whether it's movement, nutrition, sleep, stress, you name it, any of the things, the less I find out that I know. And like, I feel
Oh
like
yeah.
every single day And it's one of those cool things about this specific, I'll call it profession for lack of a better term, because I mean, it's really, a passion project for us, and doing this stuff kind of what I'll call on the side from a different job. But I mean, it's essentially it's a full time gig to understand, to be informed. Like, you want to talk about the best bit of research that I'm sure, I mean, maybe you guys have talked about in your PhD studies, is when people were like, oh, like your metabolism slows down in your 30s, and like this was like common, like people were like
Yeah.
commonly saying like, oh, in your 30s, like your metabolism slows down, and like you can look it up, and you know what, I got the PhD guy on now, and he'll probably be able to fact check this. Maybe I should pull it up right now too. But the reality is like that's not the case. Like your metabolism doesn't slow down in your 30s. What happens
Mhm.
is you're typically in your working age, primary working age, you start having kids, you start, building a family, you get more sedentary because you're not playing sports and running around with peers. And typically that's when people start to gain weight and see changes in their diet. Quick foods off the shelf, vice cooking because it's more convenient. Like all those lifestyle things start to really morph. And then the punting, the health thing was like, oh, my metabolism slow down. Like there's nothing I can do.
Yeah.
And the research, the unbiased quantitative or qualitative research comes out,
Yeah.
and they're like, oh, by the way, like you don't really hit this until you're like in your 60s, when you're getting close to like, menopause, perimenopause, like time frames. Like that's when these things really start to slow down. And it's so interesting how like, we live in this world where like that information comes out, and now you as a health professional now have to break that down, and present that to somebody whose whole world and life for the last 30 years was built upon something else. And it happens all the time in health and wellness. Like people, cold plunges, sauna therapy, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
It's all, and GLP-1s, we could go on a huge tangent, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's wild how this is like, it's almost like being in medicine, being a lawyer, being in something like that, where like you can never stop, because every time you learn something new, you're like, oh man, like I had no idea. And I'll talk to somebody who has never trained a day in their life, and I'll find out something new.
Yeah. I I remember whenever I really came back onto the scene of like training and going back to school for exercise science, like just the 2 year gap, 2.5 year gap that I had, training methods had adapted. There was a new focus on how you should program your athletes, right? Block versus traditional periodization, training residuals, like all these things that one are known at one point. It just changes, and it's a matter of 2 years. So think about the things that that have changed over the course of 10, 20 years. I think one of the me personally, one of the biggest battles, I wouldn't say battles because I'm not really like trying to fight it just because it's not my primary job, is like the misinformation online. Like that to me is one of the like greatest weaknesses we have as a society. Just because we want such quick results, or we want information so fast in a short form. Anything that's said online, if you don't have the appropriate uh I don't know, like backing or like counter arguments, people just take it as like the word, right? And that's their holy Bible, and that's what they're following, that they're what they're gonna follow with. And like when I started my new like Instagram, like Learn with Jim, it was solely about how do I not counter, but I want people to know just rudimentary information about exercise and be excellent consumers of information. And I think you brought it up about how I try and keep things simple. Um, like I always tell myself that, like, how can I explain this simply to the point where s- even I, like, someone can understand this. Like, I don't want to come up here and use like crazy terms about physiology, because if I was to look at it, or at least when I was coming up, if I saw
Because
a word,
Karen or
yeah,
Joe or whoever watches
yeah,
it isn't gonna know, bro. They're not
yeah,
gonna
they're
know.
not gonna
You.
know. And it's
Yeah.
like they're gonna get turned off so quickly, like, okay, I don't even know what that means, so whatever. And I think we do ourselves a disservice by speaking in that language. So it's like it's an uphill battle, but I mean it's to me it's not it's a worthy battle, because all I have to do is share my knowledge. And I don't think like that is I don't think that's too hard. You go on and make like a 30-second, 1 minute video about like, hey, maybe you train this way, or maybe you should eat this, right? The whole metabolism thing. I'm glad you brought that up because it's such a funny point. Because I always, the whole time you're saying that, I'm thinking about how, man, because I have a crazy sweet tooth. So I'm thinking about all the people that said I was going to be fat when I hit 30, because I would just take down crumble cookies, like a full pack, just like going
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah, dude, it was crazy. But I mean, I did gain a little bit of weight, but um it was not good weight. But it just made me think like your style of training ultimately impact your metabolism and how it looks in your life going forward.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I
it's
totally agree, man.
yeah,
Totally.
I always try and get people, like, one of the most important and like fundamental things anyone can do for like recovery is like going for walks. And I think that alone keeps your metabolism at a good, I mean, I don't know a value. I'm not going to throw some number out there, but it keeps it at a good pace to where your body is being efficient with what it has on it, right? All the energy that it has, it's being efficient at utilizing it. And I just think it's an effective tool for anything. Because what I explain to people is that your blood is like the gold or the oil in your body that kind of keeps the machine moving. Um, And if you're like just sitting around doing nothing, even on recovery days or days off, um, it prolongs your soreness because getting your blood isn't moving throughout your body, getting the resources that it needs to recover. And I know we're kind of going off on like a
No, dude,
crazy
you're
tangent.
good.
Yeah.
It's true though. Like a couple things that you hit on that I think are key. Like as a coach, as somebody in the health space, I feel like it is so much more important to not prove the things that you know, but help people to learn those things themselves.
Hmm.
It's like if it were just like a lack of better terms, if it was just a dick measuring contest and you're just out there and you're like trying to just spew out all this information, people, you're not going to help anybody. Like you're not going to promote the thing that you're looking to do. You're not going to improve somebody's like ability to train or to learn or to eat. And that's not the point, right? And you can be super informed and you can be a terrible coach. Again, that's
Yeah.
doctor that is like not able to has no bedside manner. They know everything and they're unable to kind of connect. So I think that's super key, and I feel like something that's important for somebody who's in that position. The other thing that I think you kind of hit on too on your tangent, but I think is super relevant, is that like movement is medicine now at this point, right? Like we used to do
Yeah.
this thing, and I feel like I made like a post about it a while ago too, where like, or maybe I talked about it on a podcast, but like rice, like the rest ice compression elevation thing for like injuries for the most part is like donezo, dude. Like
Yeah.
that is also something that's been like, sure, there's going to be some ice that's going to help, reduce some amount of swelling and inflammation. Like that's going to be helpful. Resting something like, if you break your leg, like it's not going to be smart for you to like go out and walk on your leg, right? Like, but for most things that are muscular, if you're able to get some blood flow through the area, it promotes some healing. It promotes, the ability to like work some of the soreness out. There's a lot of like benefits to that, and having some of that mobility built into your day. We talk about it all the time. Like, how hard is it to go on a 10-minute walk? I break it
Yeah.
down with nutrition clients to like, a lot of people will struggle when they're trying to, let's say, Sally comes to you and says like, hey, I'm really trying to lose weight. Like, what can I do? And I feel like we get wrapped around the axle of nutrition and as coaches being like, oh, you need to track what you eat and you need to weigh food with a food scale and blah, blah, blah. But you can do some of that qualitative stuff that you were talking about and be like, hey, Sally, like, how do you feel when you eat typically? And she's like, oh, like, I'm like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how full are you? And she's like, oh, I'm like a 9. And it's like, okay, well, if you were to go on like a 5-minute walk after you ate, like, would it be uncomfortable? And Sally's like, oh, yeah, it would be super uncomfortable. And I'm like, okay, pro tip for, trying to lose a little bit of weight. If you can eat to like an 8, where going on a walk would actually be like kind of pleasant, you're going to find that one, your metabolism's likely going to end up working better. And two, you're not going to overeat. three, you'll likely end up being in a bit of a calorie deficit and you're moving a little bit more. So like you're able
Hmm.
to take all these things and break it down into like, hey, let's eat at 80% or eat to 8 out of 10. So you're still full and you're still satiated, but now you can go and do some light movement that's going to help kind of attack it from a couple of different directions, and that's what I think it's about. It's about like breaking down, you know, fundamental concepts into bite-sized piece, whether it's for Sally down the road or for Tacklet member XYZ who's looking to perform when they're jumping from moving vessel to, this boat that they're boarding, which Jimmy should talk about some of that stuff that they do because it's pretty great too.
I'm not a tackle guy, so I can't really delve too much into that. But to your point on the to like add to the I'd say the concept of like breaking it down into smaller pieces for them to kind of like digest and internalize. I think it's also getting away from the idea that, hey, this change is going to come, rather quickly. It's going to take it. It's so hard to tell someone like, hey, I want to get my bench up from 100 to, let's say, 200, and I'm like, okay, cool, that sounds good. Like that's very doable. I mean, I can definitely make that happen. What are you thinking you can do that by? And they're like, oh, probably like 2 3 months. I'm like, all right, well, maybe we might have to change how you see how your body like changes in that way. Some like, are you new to lifting? If you're very new to lifting, yeah, you probably will. Your max probably will go up, 80 pounds in 3 months. Like it's very, very reasonable. But is your training age, I don't know, 10 years, right? Because if it's like 10 years, you're going to need very specific training, and the adaptation comes a lot slower at that point. So I think that's also a hard part for us is to like, hey, how do we break down this mindset you have, um, that this change is going to come rather quickly, right? I'm not going to lose 50 pounds in 2 months. I mean, and if you do, it's going to be at in a very unhealthy way, which then throws off the rest of your, uh, like biology or physiology. So, um, yeah, that was like a big thing in my mind because it's one of the hardest things to break down with going into the people here in the Coast Guard at MSRT. Like they're so like driven, as most people are in like special like mission capacities, or anyone that does like a really hard job. You're just very driven, and you want the change to occur so quickly that sometimes we'll drive ourselves to the point that we think doing more equates to the results coming faster. Whereas, I think I don't remember where I saw you talking about this. Maybe it was, but it was about like burnout. It might have been on one of your posts or something, but or an email. But like people tend to think if I put more work into it, the outcomes will come faster. Where, and to some extent, yes, but your body's not going to work that way whatsoever. If you put more into it without the appropriate recovery, you're going to damage it and make things a whole lot worse, right? And I think that is, I say that's one of the hardest, that and uh changing how people perceive like toughness here in like these special mission communities. Like, because for a while here, people would just they would just throw. It was like throwing darts at a dartboard, and like that was the workout. Like we're gonna figure out what to do. Just it's very random. There's no structure and order to it. I remember going through training, and one day the instructors were late to training, and when they showed up, they were like, they they were half drunk, and they were like, "All right, you guys are gonna run 4 miles," and I'm like, dude, that's insane. We haven't ran more than a mile, you know, I don't know how long, or maybe a mile and a half in like 2 months, and then you're just gonna throw this at us like that amount that you're throwing at us is way too much for our bodies, right? So it's just like it's not gonna make the outcomes come faster. So
Dude, yeah,
it's tough.
you hit the nail on the head, man, with a couple of things, right? Like the pace at which change really occurs, and being realistic with expectations is so hard. You want to talk about like people in a driven space, like yeah, there's a lot of active duty military members. There's a lot of tactical law enforcement people, that are out there that are like, oh yeah, like I'm gonna go and I'm gonna just devour this goal and like just absolutely crush it. And for some things, that's like incredibly effective, right? It can be super
Hmm.
helpful.
Yeah.
That is probably that person's mentality, and it's great. But you got to think about like you can't jump from adding and subtracting and math to multivariable calculus in like a week. You could never have done that when you were a kid. So in your health journey, it's got to be this got to be the same thing, right? Like
Yeah.
your swing is so large, and the biggest piece, and I know we talked about this a bunch when we were out east together. It's like the biggest piece is like how consistent are you actually going to be? Um,
Hmm.
and if you end up going too hard too fast, typically I see a couple things happen. One, the results don't come as fast as you wanted to, so you're super demotivated, and then you stop, and that's what I like to call the yo-yo. Everybody
Yeah.
people do that. Or two, you end up hurting yourself because you're going so hard so fast, and you're unable to do those other key things, the recovery. It's blind style of training, or it's not super like structured. Maybe you don't have a coach holding you accountable or helping you kind of craft the goal. And those things are just so critical to being able to be like, okay, this is where I want to be. This is where I want to be there. And if you have somebody who's able to be honest with you, like kind of like you're talking about, you can be like, hey, dude, 50 pounds in 3 months is like not going to happen. Right. But like 50 pounds in like 2 years, like maybe we could do that. So I feel like people they overestimate what they can do in a month, in 2 months, and they underestimate what they could do in a year or 2 years. And that's like
Yeah.
the reality is it doesn't take a Herculean effort. It just takes effort every day or
Yeah.
over time. And that's the thing, dude. Like you, me, the other people in the health and wellness space, we're not just selling health for this small amount of time. Like we're selling it until you're dead, dude. Like, oh, by the way, you need to lift weights, you need to eat well, you need to sleep,
Yeah.
you need to recover, you need to do all this thing. And oh, by the way, like you got to do it until you die, or Father Time will get you, and you're gonna get caught. And that's
Yeah.
the part of it too. That's so hard. And here's my theory. I think all men start training to either look jacked or pick up chicks or some combination of the two
For
things,
sure.
right? Like
For
it's
sure.
for sure that way because
Yeah.
the people that are picking up chicks when you are starting to get interested in them, middle, high school, whatever, are the ones that are shredded. That's like the way
Yeah.
that the best people at sports, all those things. Like there's something to that in the biology of people. And I think like when the people that find the most success in health and wellness end up having that like tipping point when I don't know when it happens for everybody. For me, it was probably like mid late 20s where like it's not about just like looking the part. It's about like feeling a certain way and moving a certain way and performing a certain way. And the other part, like the aesthetic and all those things, kind of happen naturally as a byproduct of that. And that's what I think is just so interesting. I'm sure you've experienced and or seen some of the same shifts with people that you've worked with, or maybe even in yourself too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I look at everything, especially myself. Like I think that shift for me came probably when I got here, where um, I don't remember. We are doing some sort of training, and I could just feel like my body for like probably 6 months just did not feel right, and I was like, okay, what I'm doing, how I'm training right now isn't the greatest. It's not going to lead to me being, very active when I'm 60, when I'm 70. Because for me, that's how I look at it. When I look at least from a uh like non-military personnel, I want that person to be active for the rest of their life, just as you were saying, right? And so for me, it's giving you the tools and the education to understand what does that look like, right? That doesn't look like just lifting weights every day, right? Because if that's the case, you're going to fall off somewhere, right? You need to be jumping, you need to be sprinting, you need to be moving laterally, you need to be doing balance work, you need to be doing flexibility training, mobility training, like so many different types of training. And what I've seen a lot is when you tell people that, it sounds overwhelming because it's like, oh my God, I have to do all of these things to just maintain health throughout my entire life. And then just like you said earlier, they're like, okay, I'm not going to do that. Like, I'm either going to stick to one thing or I'm just not going to do it at all. And I'd say, unfortunately, they, d- I don't know. I would say like it's hard for I don't want to say it's hard for people to understand. I think just for me, it's hard to get the message across that maybe you don't have to do this all at once. I'm not saying do this every single day or all within a week, right? We can parse it out over the course of, right? If we're looking at a year-long cycle, we can parse it out throughout the year, right? Maybe we spend January because it's cold and I don't like to run. I'm not going to go outside and run, so I'm going to lift more. Okay, maybe February I do more agility based stuff or anaerobic conditioning, inside, right? Like we can kind of parse it out and just do it gradually and what we need to as the year goes on. And then maybe, I don't know, maybe we flip it up to next year, maybe 2 months of lifting, right? There's ways to break it down that make it more digestible in any capacity. It's just figuring out how to one, get someone to believe in it. It's sad that they have to like see the person giving them the information. Like they have to have a certain look. The person giving them the information has to have a certain look, kind of like as you were saying, because I know when I go into gyms and I'm looking at like a super skinny personal trainer or like a very not obese, but just like a very thick one, I'm like, that's hard. Like my initial judgment is it's something I try and fight. Like this person either doesn't know what they're doing or they're not like they don't themselves don't do it. So why would I trust you to do it? And I don't know where that like preconceived judgment comes from. I think it's just like a
That's everybody.
yeah,
Everybody does
yeah.
that. Yeah.
But it's and I don't I want them to still have the knowledge. Like I want to believe that they have the knowledge that they just have their own kind of um whatever they're working through that maybe stops them from getting to the gym. Because I think maybe everyone has something within them that's like it's taking away from their time in the gym, whether it be like gym related knowledge or work constraints, home constraints, personal life stuff like that. So and it just goes back to your original point of being consistent. Like, what can I do that makes me the most consistent? Is it just one time in the gym a week? If that is, then maybe I do have to pack it a little bit more with different kinds of things, but at least you're being consistent with that, right? To me, it's all about getting my foot in the door with someone. And once my foot is in the door, or pretty much their foot is in the door in the gym, we can build on it. And if that's what it takes, just one time a week, then that's what we're going to have to work with,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
dude. It's interesting hearing you talking about it too, because it's so important to do that. And I heard you say earlier, and maybe I talked to you about this too when we met, but you're starting to coach youth athletes too, which I don't know if you've been doing that. Well, I guess you were doing that obviously when you were training and working at the college, but now you're doing it again, whether they're high school or college kids. And I was coaching high level lacrosse. I've coached college lacrosse too at the Citadel as well. And it's so funny how like when you go through this whole like phase of like coaching and training, like then you got to like break it down to like kids and then get kids involved and kids on board too. It like you think parents are hard and adults are hard, which is true. Kids are also very challenging as well. But the one nice thing that I feel like kids have that I think parents and adults in general struggle with is like kids are way better about having fun. And I think
Mhm.
like adults really struggle to do that. So something else that like I think is helpful is like, hey, what do people like to do? Like if
Yeah.
you're somebody who's like a straight gym rat and you're like you never need to get told to go in there, you're doing like crazy 2 a days, you're like bodybuilding style lifting and you're enjoying that stuff, like sick dude, you should do that. But also know like there's some benefits you could get from doing this that will potentially even help you in that department that you're super into. Conversely, if you're somebody who is like, oh my God, dude, I love running. Like running is my favorite thing. It gives me life. Bless you. Also, like, I don't know how you guys do that, but, like if running is the thing that gives you life, like be like, okay, for me to improve at running, me having some lean muscle mass, some ability to lift weights, some extra mobility, and having these other things kind of built into my thing, it's also going to help lend to this being better.
Mm.
And it's interesting too when you're coaching kids, getting people to connect the dots of like, oh my gosh, like I'm doing all these weird skips. I'm like doing plyometrics. Like what is happening? And when you get a kid that gets to run through like a timer, like a 40-yard dash timer or something like that, and they can see themselves on day one when they ran a 6-second one, and then on day 30 after you had them doing all these jumps and they're running like a 5.8 or a 5.7, you're like, hey dude, like the stuff we're doing is working and this is why. You can start to build some of that stuff in for them, and then they start to get extra motivated because they're starting to see some of the results. It's almost like a Mr. Miyagi style, dude, where it's like
Yeah,
wax on, wax off, and he doesn't know why. And all of a sudden, like he's like, wax on, wax off, and it's just like,
it all comes together.
yeah, man, for real.
I never it's for kids, at least the one I train, his name's Emerson. He is I feel like he's so unique because he's so driven that um he whatever I say in terms of training, if the way I explain to him, he's like, okay, yep, no, that makes sense. Let's do it. Like he is definitely unique in terms of like athletes that I've trained.
Good, dude. He's going
Because
places.
he
Shout
dude,
out.
that's what I'm saying. Yeah, his dad has him like doing like mental training too on top of like physical training, which is I was like, dude, this kid's gonna be ahead of the game. Doesn't matter if he is successful in athletics or not. Like he is going to be a good and successful human, presuming he stays the course. But like he's like being equipped with the tools to handle it. Um, but there are some people, which myself included in this group, some of them need to know why. Like, why am I doing this, and for what reason? And this, like for me, it permeates to almost every aspect of my life because I really have to know the why behind things. Otherwise, it's hard for me to get behind it. And as a coach or like a trainer, being equipped with that, not like it's not at least at this point anymore. I think it's not good enough just to know how to train people. Like I feel like that is like the minimum standard. You have to know what what it is you're like referring to people or telling people. Um, One, it just builds your credibility, but also you're giving them why this makes sense and why it's good for either, longevity or the immediate action that you're putting them through. And to me, that like there's so many things where I say like, oh, this is like the thing, and but like this for me is one of the things to do for people. Like, regardless if they want to know it or not, I want them to know why they're doing it because it's such a crucial fact for them. At least they know, whether they ask or not, they know what it is they're doing, and they're not wasting their time because I don't want to waste their time. I'm sure they don't want their time wasted with all these like fancy tricks of like exercises or programming styles and methods, right? And I just keep it simple, straightforward, simple. At least from a training perspective, simple works, basics work. You can get the advanced stuff from your actual sport if you are playing sport. Um, for usually, people that are just working out for health, again, the basics, it's all you really need. Can you play around onesie twosies with some cool stuff? Yeah, absolutely. Do they want to do a landmine, reverse lunge to like a quick pop? I don't know, maybe. But uh let's see if you can just like squat first, or let's see if you can throw some weight on your back and handle it. um
Yeah, dude. And that's the other part of it too that I think is interesting in health too, right? Is like everything is like, can you squat? Can you push? Can you pull? Do you have a hip hinge? Do you have single leg stability? Can you move laterally? Like all those things fundamentally are so important. And then we start doing like, oh, I'm gonna like drop off this thing, or I'm gonna hold this, crazy position and then try and make this movement pattern happen. And it's like, let's remember that at the end of the day, the most important thing is being really, really good at those basic fundamentals. Which, if you're a baseball player, are you making it to the majors if you can't field a ground ball? If you can't, slide to like the base properly? If you're not able to catch a fly ball, like these things are fundamental patterns to being good at
mhm.
baseball. And just because now the coach is now telling you like this new like technique when you're trying to swing or a way to generate additional power, like those guys have thousands and thousands and thousands of reps doing that thing. Just like, Kobe and Michael Jordan. I love to say, like, this is my favorite example. It's like, oh, you can like chat GPT Michael Jordan's like training program, dude. But like you might not know the movements. You can look them up and you can make it happen, like go ahead and do it, dude, because like that's the thing. And then going back to the consistency thing, Michael Jordan is Michael Jordan because of what he had going on here, not because of
Yeah.
the program that he wrote, right? Like his coach would program him, you know, let's say 3 sets of 10, and he'd do 5 sets of 10, or he'd do 6 sets of 10. And it was just like his mentality was to just kill, like murder the whole entire workout all the time. And that's something that like, shout out to that kid, man, Emerson. That's super cool that he's doing some like mental toughness or like ability to kind of lock in, because the sports psychology, which you also have at least some knowledge of from your
Hmm.
bachelor, I'm sure, plays
Yeah.
in so heavily, especially as you're in competitive sport. Probably even in the tactical law enforcement community
Oh
that you're
yeah.
part of too. Like how much of that is like confidence in your ability to perform, minimizing stress, being able to like make that stuff happen. Like it's gotta be out there a bunch, right?
Oh, it's huge. It's funny because, well, not funny, wrong word, but they're like
I'll laugh with you,
this.
dude. Come on.
The space goes from athletes where it's like the goal, win or lose, right? So again, we all have an inherent, not all, but like most people, most athletes have that inherent drive for competition. So like we want to win, right? But then you take the tactical athlete space, it goes from win to lose to now live or die. And so when you take those consequences into account, things change. Like things change. Your actions change, and the amount of stress that you put on your body, like that ultimately changes. And I think it's difficult for people to, at least like MSRT wise, to conceptualize how that will affect their performance, just because the units, or at least the West Coast unit, is so new, and we haven't been put in too many dangerous situations, right? So it's like you don't understand how you will perform or act under that situation, right? I think everyone thinks they're going to be the superhero, the
Everyone
protagonist
thinks
in
they're
their own
Jason
story.
Bourne. Everyone
they're
thinks
gonna they think they're gonna rise to the occasion, right? And my coach said it nonstop. And I used to be like, hell no, I'm gonna rise to the occasion. But he always said, you're gonna fall to the level of your training. You're gonna fall to what you've done in the gym, at 10 o'clock at night, right? Were you in there getting those shots up? And it's the same thing here with tactical athletes. Like, what has your training looked like? Because if you've never sprinted, the moment you try and sprint, at least for multiple
you're hurting.
times on this boat, yeah, they may be okay in a dangerous situation because you've got some adrenaline pumping, and right there will be a lot of things going on that kind of help you survive that aspect. But like the moment that stuff dies down or it comes down a little bit, are you in a prolonged stressful situation where those cortisol and adrenaline levels, like, they kind of even out now? Sure, you're still stressed, but everything starts to even out and come down to a more homeostatic space, or like a balanced space, and you now have to perform again. Like, it's hard to I guess, like, believe those kind of things from when you've never experienced it. And I think that, like, getting those points across to people in like the tactical law enforcement space or tactical military space, it's like you need to do all of these things, all of these training methods, so that way when it happens in real life, you're not, not real life, but like in a dangerous situation, you're not behind the curve. And that's just like the simplest way I like to put it. And
You're
even
It's the fourth quarter, and you just
oh
did
yeah,
in basketball. You just took the ball up and down the court 5 times, and now you've got to make a game-winning shot. Like it's
yeah,
the same thing with athletics. It's the same thing. It's the same thing with flying. Like here's a great example. We've got I fly a multi-engine prop plane, right? The propeller is designed to where if you have an engine failure, propellers obviously spinning, biting air, kind of like a boat prop. If one engine fails, the prop is designed to go to a feathered state, which is essentially it's going to like move through the air. Essentially, what it does, it reduces drag and it makes it easier for you to maneuver the plane. The way that we train single engine operations and Coast Guard aircraft that I fly is we train it closer to where that propeller feels more like a barn door, i.e., it has more asymmetry, which makes it harder to maneuver and harder to control. So we're not just simulating the practice like you play, we're actually making it more challenging
Yep.
than the actual situation. And what's funny is I actually know how it is because I had to land the plane single engine before, like actually, right? And I come back in after I land the plane single engine, and I had everybody like ran up because it's only happened a handful of times in our plane's history. They're all run up to like, oh, like how was it? How was it? And I wanted to be like, oh, dude, it was so hard. Like, like it only I could have done it, to stroke. But the reality is like we've all been trained and prepared so that we can handle that situation from like a straight flying like mechanics ability. The biggest thing that happened in that situation is you see how people handle true stress because your stick and rudder skills are perfect. Like you know how to do that, right? But do you know how to talk to air traffic control? Do you know how to tell the crew like, hey, guys, we need to sit down. Like, we don't need to talk about this at this time. Like, this is the more important thing. How do you prioritize things? Are you able to calm the other pilot down who's freaking out because they've never
Hmm.
seen anything and figure out how to like maneuver and get through the situation and put the plane on the ground? And I'm sure you guys have similar situations when you're going through, training syllabuses or whatever your kind of protocols are to be like, hey, like this stressful situation's now happened. Like, what are you going to do? And the reality, and you've probably alluded to it earlier, is like you can't train for everything. You only have so many scenarios and things that you can work through. So when you're like, hey, you're going to be armed with all of these tools, and now you need to know how to apply them. And that's the same in health and wellness, right? If you get the foundational base and you can have all these fundamental tools, then you can start to apply it. And it's cool in like sport and how much of it translates into like life. And, we geek out a little bit about, Coast Guard operations and stuff because that's kind of our backgrounds too. But like all of these things end up being connected and make you into a better athlete, person, fitter. You look better naked at the same time. Like, talk about a full win, dude. You want to be athletic and look like He-Man. You don't want to be, you don't want to, you don't
You
want
look
to
like
look
Peter Griffin.
Fat Albert, dude. Come on.
Yeah. I it's so interesting because I think I was thinking about this not too long ago. I don't know what spurred it on, but it was the idea that like my athletic background has like shaped my idea of how to handle adversity. Like I've been so fortunate enough to have coaches and mentors that were so uh focused on you know ha- I guess drilling how we handle adversity, right? Uh you're losing a game. You're not where you want to look physically. You're not where you want to be in the gym, right? All these things aren't going right, right? How are you going to respond to that and push yourself to a point where you want to be? Uh, in some athletic cases, it's probably I think there's unhealthy ways that they push you to that ledge, but I think the weight room or any kind of training is the stimulus for people that aren't sport inclined and don't want to play sports, right? That's one way. I don't want to say that's the only way, but that is one way to be faced with that adversity, especially if you're in a spot where like I don't like the way I look. I don't like the way I feel. I don't like my outlook on life or so many mentalities, right? I know we're getting kind of into the psychological aspect of it, but um the challenges you put yourself through in the weight room or training, uh the physical changes that are apparent when you start training, like these things all kind of put you in a space where I see little win and it makes me more consistent and I want to keep going. And regardless if there's a little setback, I've seen the progress before. I know what it does. And so I know if I stay the course and I keep with it, it'll eventually progress to where I want. But and hopefully you have someone there that kind of helps maintain that accountability because I mean we all know how easy it is to kind of let that go. So
Yeah,
I
dude.
think it's hard at times, but there are other times where it's really easy. So it's like those easy times, life's great. Grass is green, the butterflies are flapping around, right? The sun's super bright, but then when it's rainy, it's foggy. It's cold. You don't want to be outside. You don't want to be in the gym. And this even goes for me. I hate running in the cold. I hate it. My lungs hurt. My my throat feels tight. Like I despise it. But sometimes I need to do it because I need to remind myself, like, hey, yes, this sucks, but this is the adversity that we want to fight against, right? This is, you want to push yourself so you're not like, I don't know, feeble or weak minded as you get older, you know?
Yeah, dude, it's not always sunshine and rainbows. You don't always have the best outfit, the best lighting, the best night of sleep, the best environmentals, whatever it becomes. And there's something to doing things that are hard, and you can do hard things, you know. Dude, I
Yeah.
don't want to keep you too long. I want to ask you one last kind of question. Somebody else is listening to this and they're like, "Hey, man, like, I like James has got a lot of great pieces of advice, but I want to like hone in on like one thing that you're like, oh hey, this is one piece of advice that I feel like has been super helpful for me, or I've seen it be helpful for somebody else. And it can be in exercise, it can be in health and wellness, it can be more psychology based. What's something that somebody could take away and be like, oh, like I could implement X into my life, and it'll help me, live a happier, healthier life, or some version of that.
Mm. I feel like this is a two-part answer for me. The most immediate thing that comes to my mind, and we touched on it earlier, is training like all kinds of styles, right? Long, not long distance running is like I would say like 30 minutes to an hour, right? If you're not like a crazy marathon runner, right? Long distance running, short distance running, lifting, uh, stretching, like all those modalities, sprinting, jumping, all those things. But it's implementing them in short doses, in small, not short, short and small doses. I think people look at exercise and it's just exercise. They don't look at it from a as a medicine, right? There's a certain prescription that everyone gets when we're making programs. And sometimes if your exercise dose is too big at first, one, you're going to get hurt, especially if it's something you haven't been doing in a while. Take sprinting, for example, right? I haven't sprinted in a long time. Not me personally, but like say I haven't sprinted in a while. If I come out and think, okay, 5 years ago, I was sprinting like crazy, I could probably do the same amount of sprints now, right? That's too much of a dose, right? That's an 800 milligram, or that's 1,000 milligram Vicodin or something like that. Something crazy. I don't know. I don't even know if 1,000 milligrams Vicodin is bad, but let's just say it's bad for you,
Yeah.
right? Whereas you need something small. You need a 20 milligram ibuprofen or 100 milligram ibuprofen, right? And what that looks like is maybe, okay, I'm going to go sprint. I'm just going to do two reps, let's just say 50 yards, right? And the most important thing is your intention behind it, right? I know I can't sprint like I'm running the Olympic 100-meter sprint right now, right? I haven't ran like that in a while because your intention drives how you perform. It's just sending electrical signals to your muscles to tell it how to perform. So if you're telling it, I need to go max, I need to go max, right? Sometimes the muscle can't handle that. Sure, neurologically, your nervous system can handle sending off those signals.
This is I'm like can't stop picturing like the guy who was like, oh dude, I was so good in high school, and then like
Yes.
he's now like in his mid 30s and is like, oh yeah, dude, I'm gonna go and kick this ball in a kickball league, and then they kick the ball and then they start sprinting down the first base line and they think they still got it, but he haven't trained, and then
Yes.
the hamstring pops, something changes, and then you're done, and you're not only out for the rest of the season that you just paid for and all that ends up happening, but you're also out for longer than that, and it permeates into
Yeah.
other aspects of your life because you are not ready for the amount of stress that you just put on. But like you said, mentally you're like, oh dude, I
I
was
got
so
it.
good. Coach should
I
have told me
I
do one
I'm
stay,
s
do one stay.
yeah, I'm still like in my mind, I'm still a 22-year-old kid, playing basketball, but your body, your physiology is not at that point. So your dose of exercise needs to be appropriate to that. And I think if we start looking at exercise as like a dose, as like a little pill, right? We'll take the appropriate amounts of like, okay, hey, look, I can't do 4 sets of back squat, deadlift, RDLs, uh, dumbbell bench press. I can't do 4 sets of all these exercises in one go. So I would say it's manage your expectations, understand like the intention behind your exercises, like the intention you bring to it, right? Your mind does a lot more than you'd think. There's probably so many more things I could say. It's just so much, but
No, dude,
that's
that's
like
great.
yeah.
Yeah, dude, we'll get on a tangent and I'll just have you here for 2 hours. So, yeah, man, thank you for real for coming on. I really appreciate it. I think that there would be a lot of people that listen to this, whether they're in the tactical community or athletes or people like that, that'll be like, oh man, like he said a bunch of stuff. So, I'm gonna put all of Jimmy's stuff here in the show notes if you guys want to find him. His page is awesome. The new Instagram page. You want to give a quick plug for the one that you're talking about before, referenced earlier, the
Yeah. Yeah, it's the handle is learn.with.gym, and it's literally just educational like content. I want people to know like the simplest information about how to train, how to consume research. That's kind of how I started it. I would just kind of post up research videos or research articles and kind of talk about it like, hey, I want you to be a good consumer of research. One of my biggest pet peeves is when someone says, "Oh, this study said, X, Y, and Z," and I'm like, I'm not to like grandstand, but I'm like, well, a lot of stuff goes into research, like how you interpret it, right? You can't just take a blanket statement of, oh, they found that. I don't know. They found this, so it's true. Like, no, like I've done so many assignments where the professors link bad research studies in the assignment post, and they're like, hey, critique this article. They're like, hey, you got to critique this article. And you, like, as a PhD student, you're like, man, who am I to critique these doctors and professors that are putting out research? But then when you go through it, you're like, well, shit, this is actually kind of bad. So just things like that, like that's kind of what I'm about. I want people to know the appropriate stuff, and I want them to be well informed. I don't really like the disinformation or misinformation that's prevalent on Instagram.
Sweet, man. Yeah, I'll be sure to plug that here in the show notes too. Thank you again for coming on, dude. I
Yeah,
feel like we could
thank
have gone
you.
on for hours, and I felt the same way when we first met out in North Carolina. So thanks again for coming on, man.
Yeah.
And we'll definitely have to do it again sometime soon, especially when Dr. King starts coming into the show.
Next next
That's
year.
right,
Next year.
right. I already have his name pre-saved as Dr. King, so you gotta make sure that his thesis comes out. Thank you to you guys who have listened to us, monologue slash chat about health and wellness for the last 7 minutes. Remember, leave us a 5-star review. Don't be a lazy ass. It really helps the show grow if you listen this long. And you don't stop playing because you get old. You get old because you stop playing. We'll see you guys next time. Peace.